And for all Angelenos, we are hurting, grief, still in shock and angry, and I am too. The devastation that our city has faced. But in spite of the grief, in spite of the anger, in spite of the shock, we have got to stay focused until this time passes, until the fires are out. Now, we need to stay focused, but I will say that when the fires are out, make no mistake, we will have a full accounting of what worked and especially what did not. And I know that this is a top priority of the people that are here behind me and the firefighters and the first responders that are on the front line. There is nothing that I will not do for the city where I was born and raised. And I know that that goes for all of us. So let me be clear about something. The fire chief and I are focused on fighting these fires and saving lives, and any differences that we might have will be worked out in private, but right now, our first and most important obligation to Angelenos is to get through this crisis. When the fire is out, there will be time for us to evaluate, but at the same time, we also must begin the recovery effort, and there'll be more to come from that in the next few days. So you saw last night that the fires intensified. The Palisades fire expanded, leading to additional evacuations in Encino and parts of Brentwood. But despite the flare-up, relentless air and ground assaults has led to increased containment of the fire. Emergency shelter is open at the Lanark Regional Recreational Center in Canoga Park. We are updating on lacity.gov with information about assistance and up-to-date evacuations. The Hearst fire is now 76% contained, and the Sunset fire is almost 100% contained. FEMA teams are on the ground providing in-person support, helping Angelenos apply for disaster relief at the Westwood Recreation Center and Ritchie Valens Park. The Small Business Administration is now offering home disaster loans, business disaster loans, and economic injury disaster loans, which can be applied for at lending.sba.gov. Let me repeat that, lending.sba.gov. And the National Guard is here too, helping relieve our firefighters and secure the perimeter of our evacuation zones, aiding our Los Angeles police officers in having zero tolerance for crime. And let me just say that again, zero tolerance for crime. And so that means if you are bold enough that you are going to go into a fire area and attempt to break in homes or do looting of any type, you will be arrested, you will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. In the grief, in the anger, in the pain that we are going through, the idea that there would be predators out there that would try to take advantage of this situation will not be tolerated. I want the people of Los Angeles to know that your emergency departments are working as hard and as fast as they can for you. We are a city, Los Angeles. We have been through tragedies before. I remember 1992, the civil unrest, when we had to rebuild the city. I remember 1994, the big earthquake. This tragic event will bring us together. We will stay together. We will get through the fires, and then we will rebuild our city, and we will rebuild our city even better.
The Palisades fire has had flare-ups last night, earlier this morning. And the threat to more homes, to more communities is very real. What do you tell these residents that are now finding themselves under evacuation orders?
Well, you know what? I think that the people in Palisades and in most of the areas have been doing everything they can. They've been responding to the evacuation orders. I think that is critical that they do that. We know that those people who stay behind might not be able to get out. And I think that it's important that people pay attention to that. The good news is that the fires have been slowly being contained. I know that the Palisades area is one of the ones that is the most vulnerable for the winds to continue to spike up. And it's anticipated that the winds will kick up again at the beginning of the week.
And what about
So
those
having
pockets?
National Guard there, having law enforcement there is going to be very critical, because not only do we have to protect ourselves from the fires, but we also have to make sure that no one goes up there and attempts to loot, attempts to do anything that is inappropriate in the area.
And those other pockets, Brentwood, Encino, that are now...
Well, they need to pay attention to what the orders are. You know, in some of the areas they've been told to evacuate. I know that west of the 405, people are supposed to evacuate. I know east of the 405, it's a warning. So I think people need to pay careful attention to what the instructions are. And please, please, please not try to wait out the fires.
When Chief Crowley walked into your office yesterday, were you planning to fire her? Were you angry with her over her media appearances
Oh, my
on
goodness.
CNN and Fox? And do you agree with her that the fire department is very underfunded and understaffed?
Let me just say that, as you see here, the chief and I are lockstep in our number one mission. And that mission is to get us past this emergency right now. We want to make sure that we save lives, we save housing, we save businesses, and if there are differences that we have, we will continue to deal with those in private.
But were
Thank
you
you.
planning to fire her?
No.
Thank you.
Next question, Julia.
Governor Newsom said in an interview yesterday that he wasn't getting straight answers from local leaders, and that he was, quote, "I was getting different answers, that I'm not getting the actual story," and that said that in reference to the investigation he's bringing on LADWP. What do you make of that?
First of all, I have no idea as to what he means when he says he's getting different answers from different people. But I have to tell you, I have a lot of concerns about every step of what has happened over the last week. Again, we have to stay focused on the number one mission, which is getting through this crisis, keeping people safe. Examining what happened, I want a full investigation of every level. So I'll follow up with the governor to find out exactly what he means, but I do not know.
Next question, Simon, and then Tom.
I'm going to defer to my colleague to ask this question first. Yeah, this question is directed at both you, Madam Mayor, and Fire Chief Crowley. You know, the dynamic between you two today appears very different than 24 hours ago. You
Yes.
say that you're in lockstep.
Yes.
How can Angelenos be sure that you two are on the same page when everyone is facing this historic and unprecedented crisis?
Well, I think, first of all, you have heard it directly from me. I'll give her an opportunity to repeat it again, that we have one mission, and that is going to be our sole focus. Now, prior to this, the chief and I have always been in regular communication, and we will continue to do that. Chief.
Thank you for that. I stand by my comments this morning, especially in this time of crisis. That number one priority, with actually Chief McDonald, Madam Mayor, and myself,
That's right.
are all on the same page. And I don't know how to overstate that at this point. That's why we're all here today, is to make sure that the community, the people that we serve, understand exactly where the three of us are. And I think I know we've clearly articulated that this morning. So thank you for the question.
Just one follow-up quickly. Are there enough resources for the city to answer the demands of this?
Well, let me just say that not only are there the resources and unlimited resources that the fire department, the police department need right now. We're not going to sit around and look at what we're going to spend on or not. If Chief McDonald calls me and tells me this is what he needs, if Chief Crowley calls me and tells me this is what we need, then that's what we'll do. But let me just also say that it's beyond Los Angeles. So the mutual aid component, I'm getting phone calls from all over the country, from people I served with in Congress who have now moved on to be governors. We have a number of different states, even Canada called. But that is what happens in natural disasters. I know the chief and I think it was just a couple of months ago, We had a number of firefighters go around the country. Firefighters go around the country all the time to assist in natural disasters, and that's exactly what is happening. Now, let me add on to that to say that President Biden, Vice President Harris, the state leaders, and obviously the governor, but also the head of the state Senate, the head of the state assembly, they have all been calling us off the hook. I did a press conference yesterday, a Zoom press conference, the governor and I did, with the president and the vice president, for the president to reiterate over and over again. The fact that we're getting 100% reimbursement from FEMA is not something that is usual. Not at all. But it is something that the president agreed to. So I feel confident that whatever support is needed, we will have.
Have you heard at all from the incoming administration?
I have not heard from the incoming administration. However, I have reached out to some of my Republican colleagues. It is helpful that I served with many people who now will be going through confirmation, so I'm in touch with my colleagues.
Mayor, you mentioned Canada, but you also have resources coming in from around the world. We heard a group of firefighters coming in from Mexico en route.
Great, great. I received a message from the mayor of Paris, who I got to know, obviously, last summer, extending her concern and condolences. So yes, Mexico, Canada, all of North America coming together to deal with a natural disaster in this area that we have never seen before.
Tom and then Dave.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Madam Mayor, in the days leading up to Tuesday's tragedy, it was being described as potentially catastrophic and life-threatening event. Our history, as Encino tells us, there are certain parts of the city that are more susceptible to the ravages of fire than others, the Palisades being among them.
Mm-hmm.
We learned that by midday Wednesday, the 3 1-million-gallon tanks that store water in the Palisades area have been overwhelmed by the massive size of this fire it really drained. My question is looking at preemption, were there any efforts made to bring in water tankers to stage them around the Palisades and other areas that have lots of foliage that have historically been fire hotspots? And piggybacking off of that, the mutual aid you're now getting from around the state and from around the nation, were there any efforts to preemptively bring in mutual aid for a worst case scenario, which is proven to be true? And if it hadn't, we all wish it hadn't happened. If it hadn't happened, say thank you and we'll help you out down the road and pay for it.
It's my understanding that that's not the way mutual aid works. But again, there is a long list of issues that need to be examined, dissected, investigated, evaluated. And if there are people who need to be held accountable, they will be. Thank you.
One quick follow-up. We now have the National Guard throughout the
Yes.
city and the county. Another question about preemption. Were there any efforts to mobilize the National Guard preemptively just as an apparatus to be able to do mass evacuations? Again,
It's my understanding that that is not the way it works. When I spoke to the governor on Wednesday, it was beginning that process. But because in an event like this, you don't exactly know what's going to happen, but you don't mobilize 1,000 National Guard or 200 National Guard just in case.
Can I respectfully ask why not? Isn't it better to have them somewhere staged in a military base, whatever, in case we need them, than have them come in 48 hours after?
Well, I can certainly share my experience at UCLA when we were having all the protests there. And the idea that we would have 200 police officers that were waiting around to go to a protest in UCLA, that's just not the way you mobilize troops. People are coming from all over the place.
Didn't they mobilize the National Guard in advance of the O.J. Simpson verdict?
Well, you're talking 20, 30 years ago. I can't respond to that.
That's
Chief,
unpredictable.
would
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I mean, this is an unpredictable event. You have predictable wind coming. You don't know how the extent of that wind. You can't predict you're going to have a fire, and certainly nothing to this scale. Something like you mentioned the O.J. Simpson case. That's something that at that time, and I was there, it was predictable that the verdict was going to come out date certain, and so you could set up to be able to address whatever the issues were. But with natural disasters, it's a whole different ballgame. Nobody can afford to send people to stand around for what may happen. We have to respond as quickly as we can when the need arises.
Question to Dave, and then we're up.
The fire chief said yesterday that the city failed her department. Do you feel that's a reflection on you, and do you agree with what she said?
You know, once again, I will say that I have one mission right now, and the two of us, and frankly, all of us here, have one mission, and that's to save lives, to save homes, and to save businesses. That is going to be my focus. Any issues, opinions, differences, whatever I might have, will be dealt with in private. Thank you.
Mayor, and given that that is your mission, now that you know about this significant wind event that is coming up, how are you preparing?
Well, I mean, I think you have an example here. Everybody standing here. We are absolutely doing everything we can to prepare. Knowing what has happened over the last few days, we will be prepared. Thank you.